Hello and welcome back to the Shakey Sonnet Show. I am Tootight Lautrec, the drag laureate of the Sonnetarium, and here we are once again in the Sonnetarium at the bottom of the down staircase in the permanently sequestered remainders section of an unnamed local library, which may or may not have a couple of lines on the front steps. Some say they are couchant, some say they are ready to pounce. Some say they look innocent enough, but may soon show the deep down wantonness that they actually contain, much like Sonnet 96 today, which is what we're going to be looking at. The third poem in a trio of poems, 94, 95, 96, and I'm dealing with 96 separately from 94 and 95 because in addition to it being the third in a trio, it's also linked to Sonnet 36. And in fact, Sonnet 36 and Sonnet 96 share the exact same couplet. So let me just read shortly Sonnet 36, just so we can get a flavor of what we're talking about here. And you can see the differences when it comes to the couplet. Sonnet 36. Let me confess that we two must be twain. Although our undivided loves are one, so shall those blots that do with me remain without thy help by me be borne alone. In our two loves there is but one respect, though in our loves lives a separable spite, which, though it alter not love's sole effect, yet doth it steal sweet hours from love's delight. I may not evermore acknowledge thee, lest my bewailed guilt should do thee shame, nor thou with public kindness honor me, unless thou take that honor from thy name. But do not so. I love thee in such sort as thou, being mine, mine is thy good report. So in fact, I believe that Sonnet 36 is like Sonnet 96, the capping sonnet of a trio, 34, 35, and 36. All of those poems, 34, 35, and 36, speak of the beloved's sins. In Sonnet 34, even the shame that the beloved might express for his own sins against the narrator doesn't soothe the narrator until it does in the couplet, where those tears that are pearls are ransom for all ill deeds. And in Sonnet 35, we have those roses have thorns and canker lives in the sweetest buds, and the narrator is sort of at war with himself for excusing the beloved sins. And then when we get to Sonnet 36, we two must be twain, sounds pretty severe, but we hear again of those blots that do with me remain, and indeed these are the same blots that we see again in Sonnet 95. But here, the couplet, but do not so, I love thee in such sort as thou being mine, mine is thy good report. In Sonnet 36, it seems to be a forgiving of sorts. We're going through some hard times, it seems to say, mostly because of you, beloved. But we are one. You are me, I am you. If either of us talk shit about each other, it'll reflect poorly upon both of us. But do not so. So we won't spill the beans on either of us because we are one. Whatever one does hurts the other, and whatever helps one helps the other. And it seems like a bit of a reconciliation of sorts. And then we get to Sonnet 96 after 94 and 95, which we saw last week. And here is Sonnet 96. Some say thy fault is youth, some wantonness. Some say thy grace is youth and gentle sport. Both grace and faults are loved of more and less. Thou mak'st faults graces that to thee resort. As on the finger of a throned queen the basest jewel will be well esteemed, so are those errors that in thee are seen to truths translated and for true things deemed. How many lambs might the stern wolf betray, if, like a lamb, he could his looks translate? How many gazers mightst thou lead away, if thou wouldst use the strength of all thy state? But do not so. I love thee in such sort as thou, being mine, mine is thy good report. So in the first quatrain here, some say thy fault is youth, some say it's wantonness, some say your grace is youth and just gentle sport. You're just, being young and playing around. But you have so many faults. Where do I begin? And let's start with what other people say about you. This is what everybody's saying about you. And you, because you're so charming, you make your faults seem graces. Or do you? We get to the second quatrain. As on the finger of a throned queen, a true queen can wear any kind of jewelry, no matter what kind of trashy paste she picks up. And it'll be transformed into a glittering wonderfulness because of the queen that she is. Or so I hear. As on the finger of a throned queen, the basest jewel will be well esteemed. So are those true errors that in thee are seen, to truths translated and for true things deemed. Even when you tell lies, they seem like they're the truth because, you're so wonderful. And your faults are just like that trashy ring on the finger of the queen. The third quatrain. We have wolves in sheep's clothing. If how many lambs might the stern wolf betray, if like a lamb he could his looks translate? How many gazers mightst thou lead away, if thou wouldst use the strength of all thy state? That seems pretty clear. You could lead away lines and lines and lines of lovers to your lair if you used all of your charms, if you used the strength of thy state, the full power of all your charms. And then we get to the couplet. But do not so. I love thee in such sort as thou being mine, mine is thy good report. Now, I love thee in such sort, and this such sort is different from the such sort that we saw in line 36. In 34, 35, and 36, our couple seems to be meeting with similar troubles. By the time we get to 94, 95, and 96, our couple's relationship has matured, and so have the two people in it. We still have infected flowers and stinking lilies, but the whiff of rot seems to be getting a little bit too much to take for the narrator. 95 carries the canker even further, and the shames in 34 and 35 show up again in 94 and 95 as sourness and blot. Blot, the most wonderfully ugly word I have ever heard. It's just gorgeously descriptive. Blot. And you can't really translate that into any kind of sentence that sounds really good. What a lovely blot you are carrying on your face. It just doesn't work. So where in 35, the narrator is an accessory to his own suffering. He, in fact, says, I, an accessory needs must be that sweet thief which sourly robs from me. And here we get sourness again, rhyming with the flower. In 95, we get that rather violent warning with the phallic knife. Take heed, dear heart. And that's pretty explicit. Take heed, dear heart. Our narrator's patience seems to be really exhausted. He'll no more be an accessory to his own injury. So 36 and 96 both culminate in the same couplet, but we move from 36's sense of I am you and you are me, and so thou being mine, we are one and the same. Mine is thy good report. If I speak bad of you, you speak bad of me. We are one and the same, so don't do that. We move from that to Sonnet 96, which is I'm warning you. Thou being mine, I love thee in such sort, and this is the sort it is. Thou being mine, and this isn't an equal, thou being mine, I am you and you are me. This is a possessive, you are mine. I'm in control. We are no longer equal, nor inseparable. And you'd better behave because What I say about you can ruin you. Despite your beauty, what I say about you can ruin you. I'll be fine, but you won't be. So this is a very different kind of do not so. It's not do not talk bad about each other and let's agree that we won't do it. It's don't think that you can just lead people away to your, your dirty den of iniquity, because that doesn't fly anymore. So looked at in this context, I do believe, or at least I can easily convince myself, that the repetition of this couplet in 96 from 36 is not a lapse, as some people propose, and it's not a printer's mistake, as other people propose. I do see it as intentional, or rather I would say that it works as an intentional jab at the beloved to say, some things stay the same, you and your cheating self, and some things change. I'm not a patsy anymore, and you'd better beware. Also, since we are going forwards and backwards, I looked ahead at the following poems for each of these, and Sonnet 37 in the first trio shows a sense of reunion and forgiveness, whereas in the second trio's follow-up, Sonnet 97, which we'll talk about next week, there shows the effects of estrangement. So it seems like things are getting pretty serious in the breakup department. And I just found out in my research, looking at Stephen Booth and Don Patterson and Hyder Edward Rollins, that there was a scholar named Tucker Brooke who did an edition in 1936 who, they say, concocted a theory of a narrative through the 154 sonnets, and they all speak of it rather dismissively. He seems to be roundly mocked, but I did just acquire it for $5 at Ava Books, an original copy from 1936. I haven't yet read it because it just arrived yesterday, but I do applaud the effort of anybody who's going to attempt to create a narrative. And once I do delve into that tome, I will let you know how it shapes up in terms of my little project. Whether his narrative is anything similar to mine or if his approach to it is anything similar, we'll see. So, our usual questions. Is there a male or a female indicated? Well, not necessarily. In Sonnet 96, we're talking about only. There is the suggestion of a his in line 10, but it's actually talking about the the wolf. How many lambs might he betray? So there's the suggestion of a male, but just a suggestion. And if we take 96 all by its lonesome and not in the full context of the sonnets, it could go male or female. Any gender is possible. Dramatically, I would suppose that any kind of change in relationships or of an idea of a relationship, a change that's hard to understand, might be applicable in Midsummer Night's Dream, where all the lovers are beguiled into thinking they're lost or found with one new lover or another, until their eyes are opened at the end. Narratively, I did look back at my video of 35 and 36, and I found the dress that I was wearing then. And I thought that 36 was the announcing of the end of a relationship, and clearly we're at Sonnet 96 and we're still talking about that relationship, so that wasn't the case. But when I first read 96, I thought this was a making up is hard to do sonnet rather than a breaking up is hard to do. And now I see it as a much more stern warning. The narrator is no longer love blind, and he is, in fact, at the end of his tether. And I had to start thinking about what rhyme and repetition mean in poetry, whether it's intentional or not. The fact that there is this repetition of the couplet, an entire couplet, 2 whole lines from 36 to 96. What happens when we get something like that? Well, there's the zing of recognition when something is repeated, just like much in a rhyme when we hear a sound repeated. There's the pleasure of familiarity, but there's also the possibility of something new, because if we just get repetition without any kind of new context or nuance, then it can quickly become boring. And here, the newness seems to be the perspective that we've gained from these 60 sonnets that came between. And as with most things that ping our memories, we often want to take a trip back to, 60 sonnets ago and look at what things were like then. And often in retrospect, when we do that, we're forced to see how things have changed and how much things have changed. So I contend that the repetition here of this couplet is intentional and that it serves as a way to propel us toward a deeper understanding of human nature. We've got love, we've got loss, we've got nostalgia, we've got maturity, we have disappointment at the cold, hard fact that love doesn't always last. There are no guarantees. And also, it highlights the aspect of love, which is that love is work. One must work at love and have a partner who is willing to balance that kind of work and provide the same kind of work or an equal measure of work on that love. Otherwise, everything's in danger of going all squanchwise. And the last thing we want is for your world to go all squanchwise. So until we meet again, do the work. Find the wonder. It's there, all around you. Pay attention. Until we meet again, I am Tootight Lautrec. No squanchwise for you.